Thank you, Frank. Hello, members and friends of HRAI. It's my pleasure and my privilege at this time to provide an update on HRAI's government relations work over the past year. As Chair Rob Flipsy stated, it's been an extraordinary year, and not just because of the pandemic and the havoc that it created across the entire planet. Unlike last year, the primary focus of our GR efforts in 2021 were not defined by COVID-19. We were able to return to some of the key priorities that have been top of mind for the industry and the association over the past several years, including regulatory harmonization, promotion of trades, training and workforce development, addressing the transition to new refrigerants, and energy efficiency and climate action policies and initiatives. Having said that, COVID did open up some doors for HRAI in the industry. In terms of what we talked about, who we talked to, and how we talked to them. I noted last year at this time that the strange new circumstances of what has now been the past year and a half dictated that we reach out to and talk with a number of new audiences with new messages, but perhaps more importantly, the pandemic forced us to develop new ways of communicating and engaging with government leaders and with each other. And I think these new techniques are here to stay. From the standpoint of visibility, I would suggest that this has brought a lot of good for HRAI and the industry. Our new audiences have included Health Canada, provincial ministries of health and long-term care, ministries of education, school boards and associations representing teachers, restaurant owners, commercial building owners, and other business sectors. Building on the status of our industry as an essential service, our messaging to all of these audiences has been about our industry's capacity to deliver meaningful solutions for Canadians who are concerned about healthy indoor environments in relation to the deadly pandemic. Of particular note here is the work of the Advisory Council on IAQ in Commercial and Institutional Buildings. Chaired by Joe Mashinsky of Arvin Air Systems, this task team summoned the best expertise from within the industry, including our friends at HRAI, as well as academic leading lights and research agencies like NRC, to provide evidence-based thought leadership regarding the role of HVAC systems in the spread or containment of harmful pathogens like COVID-19. And as you can see from this screen capture, they enjoyed a laugh now and then as well. The group produced a guideline document in January called Reducing the Risk of Virus Transmission via HVAC Systems in Schools. And this document was shared widely with provincial ministries of education and school boards across the country. Perhaps more importantly, the group assisted the Public Health Agency of Canada in the production of their guideline documents for several key sectors and building types, and engaged with Infrastructure Canada on how to prioritize spending on IAQ in public buildings. They also connected with the Building Owners and Managers Association, or BOMA, and hosted a very well-received webinar aimed at commercial HVACR contractors featuring the University of Toronto's Dr. Jeffrey Siegel. Apart from the work of this committee, the other COVID-related focus of attention was advising governments on strategies for jobs and recovery. A survey of members in the spring told HRAI that the industry was affected moderately by the pandemic-related lockdowns, but far less than what was anticipated a year ago, and certainly far less than what was experienced in other business sectors. But because governments at the federal and provincial level were asking about ways to re-stimulate the economy, HRAI made several submissions on our own and through organizations like Efficiency Canada and the Canada Green Building Council that focused on making investments in home and building retrofits for energy efficiency, carbon reduction, and improved IAQ, knowing that these types of investment would equate to meaningful job growth in the building trades across the country. As I stated earlier, once we were able to get past the all-encompassing urgency of COVID roughly a year ago and then into the later months of 2020, we were able to return our attention to other important industry concerns. I'd like to go over a few of these, touching on recent actions and results, but more importantly, on the road ahead. With the support of HRAI in the US, HRAI took a strong leadership role in addressing NRCan's proposed Amendment 17 to Canada's Energy Efficiency Act and regulations, with the goal to align single-phase central air conditioners and heat pumps with the US DOE test standards that come into force in the US on January 1st, 2023. The test standard will introduce new performance metrics and will prescribe more stringent minimum energy performance requirements. Discussions with NRCan commenced in December, and in March and again in June, HRAI, jointly with AHRI, submitted comments recommending that NRCan revise its proposal in favor of complete regulatory harmonization. Members believe that NRCan's proposals will impose unnecessary costs and compliance burdens on industry and will hinder consumer choice in the marketplace. This is a discussion that remains active and will likely go well into 2022. HRAI continues to monitor the refrigerant landscape to ensure the industry is prepared to navigate the transition to low global warming potential refrigerants. Over the past year, HRAI held 4 roundtable discussions from coast to coast with contracting companies actively engaged in the handling of refrigerants who will be affected by the changes. The 4 groups unanimously agreed that a mandatory awareness training course on safety and handling of mildly flammable refrigerants should be made available to tenured technicians at a low cost. HRAI is reviewing existing training programs on the safe handling of A2L refrigerants that are available in the US, and we believe there is a suitable program that can be modified for the Canadian industry. HRAI is in a solid position to add this training to the current curriculum, but will not seek to offer this training exclusively. Rather, we will work with governments to determine minimum guidelines for training from other organizations. On a related note, just last week, HRAI launched a new working group that will evaluate and determine the safe and reliable storage, handling, and transportation needs related to A2L refrigerants and pre-charged equipment. Chaired by Anirudh Roy of Goodman Manufacturing, the working group will review the federal and provincial regulatory environment, as well as relevant codes and standards, safety and training concerns, and will work alongside AHRI to explore pathways toward regulatory harmonization where possible. It will also seek to educate industry on potential differences and requirements in the storage, handling, and transportation of low GWP refrigerants. In their efforts to address hazardous and environmentally damaging waste issues in recent years, provinces have increasingly turned to extended producer responsibility, or EPR, programs and regulations, which put the burden on industries to manage and reduce the environmental impacts of end-of-life products. Fortunately, with its deep experience managing programs like RMC and the Thermostat Recovery Program, HRAI is well positioned to speak and act for industry on these matters. In the past year, HRAI has been engaged with Alberta Environment and Parks, the stewardship agencies of BC, Manitoba Conservation and Climate, and the Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on a variety of regulatory developments related to responsible waste management. These discussions are also ongoing, as we expect more, not fewer, of these initiatives going forward. Over the past year, HRAI resumed its work with NRCan on the refinement of the federal, provincial, territorial market transformation roadmap that is focused on charting Canada's path to zero carbon for buildings. This includes co-chairing the MTR Advisory Council and recruiting industry volunteers for technical expert teams focused on space heating, where we appointed Victor Hyman of the Climate Care Cooperative, and water heating, where David Hammond of A.O. Smith took the lead. These technical teams met numerous times from January to April and updated all the assumptions as well as the current state of relevant technologies from the standpoint of the so-called 5 A's, referring to market availability, accessibility, awareness, affordability, and acceptance. The updated roadmap that was to come from these discussions was due to be filed in April, but it appears that all of NRCan's attention was shifted to the rollout of greener homes and perhaps to dealing with the problems it has created. As a result, most meetings related to the market transformation roadmap since April have been canceled. When they resume in the fall, however, HRAI will once again take an active role working with NRCan to ensure that the plan works effectively for industry. Someone, it was probably Hugh Williams, said to me once, "If you want to let governments know what your priorities are, just tell them how to spend taxpayer dollars." On this advice, HRAI has made focused submissions to the federal government, Federal Budget Committee, as well as some provinces over the past several years. And this approach has generated some very positive results. In April, Federal Minister of Finance Chrystia Freeland unveiled a budget that in effect became a blueprint for the Liberal campaign platform ahead in the 2021 federal election. Several key elements of Budget 2021, particularly the emphasis on supporting home and building retrofits, favorable tax treatment for investments in clean technology, and targeted investments in skilled trades and apprenticeship, were directly responsive to the recommendations that HRAI made over the past 2 years. Now, because the budget approval process is a lengthy one, only 4 years after that budget was announced, HRAI was invited to make another pre-budget submission this past August, only a few weeks before the election was called. In this most recent submission, HRAI called for the following. First, a program of incentives for industrial, commercial, and institutional building upgrades to reduce GHG emissions and energy use while improving occupant comfort. Second, programs of support that will encourage investments in ICI buildings to improve indoor air quality and enhance occupant safety. Third, we called for more active consultations with the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration and related sectors with a goal to refine and improve the effectiveness of the Greener Homes grant program. Not really a budget ask, but a policy ask. Fourth, we once again urged immediate implementation of the Canada Apprenticeship Service to bring more skilled tradespeople into the HVACR sector. And finally, we asked for government investment in a workforce development and adjustment plan to assist the HVACR industry in retraining and redeploying personnel to meet the mounting challenges of the low carbon economy in a timely fashion. This is an important initiative that I'll come back to shortly. As Hugh pointed out, to support these kinds of messages, HRAI once again enlisted the services of Impact Public Affairs to organize a very successful Federal Day on the Hill in the first week of May, virtually, of course. The virtual meeting format allowed HRAI to significantly broaden the involvement of members. In all, 45 member representatives participated in 28 meetings with members of Parliament from across the country. HRAI was aided in this effort by members of HRAI from all regions of the country, 15 representatives in all. The HRAI representatives brought their own expertise and perspective to the discussions and nicely augmented the messaging from HRAI. One of the most important promises of the federal government's throne speech and fall economic statement that was later also reflected in the federal budget and the Liberals' re-election campaign was the promise of a comprehensive program for home energy retrofits. Announced in December but not launched until May, the Greener Homes program, though well-intended, ultimately attracted more criticism than applause, largely because of the near absence of advanced industry consultation on important details. HRAI heard complaints from members across the country about problematic program rules and inaccurate listings of eligible products and how these might limit participation and success of the program. NRCan cooperated with HRAI in hosting several webinars during the summer to aid members in their understanding of the program, but these sessions seemed to raise more questions than answers. Finally, after some persistent pushing from industry and HRAI, NRCan agreed to engage with a special committee appointed by HRAI to review and improve key program elements. That committee will meet on a monthly basis going forward, with NRCan at the table. In addition, in an effort to get all eligible product listings up to date, HRAI has been working with AHRI in the US to ensure their product database, which is a key data source for NRCan, is fully up to date, and then to advise NRCan on the timing of product listing updates. And just last week, another small group of HRAI volunteers met with NRCan staff to review the details of a troublesome program requirement that heat pumps of all types must be installed and specified to provide heating for the whole home, which was widely viewed as an unrealistic requirement in many applications and therefore likely to limit the program's success. These meetings have been very productive, and there is optimism that they will lead to meaningful changes in the program as it moves forward in the fall. Until Monday night, of course, there was no certainty the program would even continue, but with the resumption of a Liberal government mandate after its 36-day, $600 million vote drive, which netted a grand total of 2 additional seats in Parliament, it now seems fairly certain that the program will continue in the weeks ahead. And HRAI will continue to engage as needed with NRCan to ensure the program delivers on expectations and works effectively for members. Apprenticeship and trades training remains an important priority for HRAI. In March, HRAI submitted a proposal to Employment and Social Development Canada for $5 million to fund a workforce development plan aimed at preparing HVAC contractors to take advantage of the opportunities that will come with the transition to a low-carbon economy. The plan focused on 3 elements, and they've been outlined already to some extent in the chairman's report. The first is shifting HVACR industry culture. The second is on national training standards, which need to be harmonized across the country. And the third is on skills upgrade training, which will be essential to the industry moving forward. The focus on workforce development at the federal level is mainly about unlocking financial support for work that, for the most part, will have to be done at the provincial level. As it happens, over the past year, we've had to ramp up our efforts in 7 provinces on regulatory matters related to the trades. In British Columbia, the recently elected government has committed through its Industry Training Authority to reintroduce compulsory trades certification, which will include the key trades of our sector: refrigeration and air conditioning, sheet metal, plumbing, and electrical. This is a very welcome development that will not only ensure a suitable standard of training for HVACR technicians, but will also open the door to reintroducing a much-needed trade for residential heat pump installers in that province. HRAI has already engaged with the Minister and staff in BC, as well as the ITA, in support of this important development, and to plant the seed for a trade suited to the needs of the residential marketplace. The Alberta government recently, just this summer, introduced legislation to modernize apprenticeship and trades in the province. Some in the industry believe that the Alberta system is among the best in the world, so there is concern locally about what changes are being contemplated. HRAI will be engaged in this important exercise going forward to ensure the integrity of skilled trades in the province is not undermined. After extensive consultation with the government in Ontario about what should come in the wake of the Ontario College of Trades, which was slated for demolition already 3 years ago, HRAI and the industry were pleased to welcome the introduction of a new Crown agency called Skilled Trades Ontario that appears, at least at first glance, to retain the best of the College of Trades model while discarding some of the more problematic elements. It's very encouraging that most of the key recommendations that HRAI made on behalf of members last year are reflected in the design of the new agency. Appearances can be deceiving, however, and it will be a priority for HRAI in Ontario this fall and in the year ahead to ensure that the new regulations that will flesh out the details of Skilled Trades Ontario meet the needs and expectations of contractors and tradespersons in the province. For several years now, HRAI has been exploring the idea of introducing a residential HVAC trade in the Atlantic region as a training solution to meet the needs of an exploding market for residential heat pumps and the skills gap that this has exposed. Responding to interest from contractors in the region, we are now taking the steps needed in Nova Scotia to implement a 2-branch refrigeration and AC trade like the programs that exist in Manitoba and Ontario. If this initiative takes hold, we will pursue similar regulations in New Brunswick, Newfoundland, and PEI, where the need also exists. Beyond the focus on evolving trades, training, and certification regimes, the other primary focus of our work at the provincial level has been to connect with provincial governments and now more and more with municipal governments on the best approach to addressing climate action through programs and regulations aimed at reducing carbon emissions in buildings. A growing number of cities and municipalities across the country have declared climate emergencies and are introducing programs, regulations, and bylaws whose success will critically depend on inputs from the HVACR sector. Canada's larger city governments, notably Vancouver and Toronto, have been active in this space for years, but now we are seeing medium-sized cities everywhere dipping their toes in the water. It will be a challenge to engage with all of these governments in a proactive and effective manner, but this is a challenge HRAI will have to tackle to ensure government actions are constructive rather than damaging to industry. Finally, I want to introduce a new initiative that HRAI is exploring with the support of our board of directors and senior leadership. As you have heard from this high-level report, HRAI is already very actively engaged in discussions on climate action with governments at all levels, from federal to provincial to municipal, and this engagement is often constructive and can result in positive results for the industry. But too often, HRAI is invited too late into these discussions, almost as an afterthought, even though the success of any program or measure aimed at reducing carbon in buildings, as Philippe Dunsky pointed out, will rely heavily on the technology and expertise of this sector. Greener homes is only one example of this. Despite HRAI's best efforts, there are numerous municipal action plans that have been or will soon be rolled out with insufficient industry support. More and more public opinion polls are saying that Canadians want solutions that will reduce carbon emissions, and they are increasingly willing to pay the price. Our industry has the technology and the know-how to deliver these solutions, but we need to do a better job of letting the public and the governments that represent them in on this secret. To demonstrate leadership, HRAI is in the process of developing a bold statement that declares the industry's desire and intent to take constructive action in relation to climate change. This statement will position the industry more forcefully as a willing and ready partner that, rather than simply responding to what governments are trying to achieve, will lead the way with innovative and effective solutions for Canadians. It's time to change the terms of engagement. If the industry is prepared to lead the way by identifying targets that are achievable and laying out pathways to meet those targets and setting guidelines for success, governments will want to work with us. But this means industry will have to embrace, not resist, the changes that will lead to major industry opportunities. HRAI can't and won't do any of this without the support of its membership. We will be reaching out to members in the weeks ahead to hear your thoughts on the proposed messaging and the proposed approach. Please stay tuned and watch your inbox for messaging on this soon. Finally, I'd like to add a few words about our growing team of GR professionals. Thanks to the vision, leadership, and commitment of our board and our CEO, and the support of our membership, the team I'm able to work with on a daily basis has grown both in numbers and quality in the past year. In February, we welcomed Stephen Chartrand as our Federal Government Relations Specialist with a focus on regulatory harmonization issues. Stephen brought a unique mix of hands-on experience working as a service technician for a commercial HVACR contractor, combined with a degree in political science and direct experience working on policy briefs in the office of a provincial MPP. Working hand in hand with our sister organization in the US, HRAI, Stephen's focus is on federal government policies and regulations with an emphasis on harmonizing federal regulations with those in the US and among provinces within Canada. In April, we added veteran Bob Story to the team on a part-time basis. Bob is a professional engineer and certified energy manager with over 30 years of operations and technical project management experience at Toronto Hydro, Hatch Engineering, and the Canadian Standards Association. Bob is leading our engagement with and representation on a variety of CSA codes and standards committees. In May, HRAI brought on Chelsea Goberdan as our Government Relations Specialist for Ontario. Chelsea brings solid and varied experience working in the Ontario Legislature, as well as experience with an Ontario-based industry association. She will focus on the long list of policy and regulatory files affecting our members in Ontario. And finally, just this past week, we welcomed Pedro Serrano as our new technical advisor. Pedro will act as a technical support for the HRAI staff and instructor team, as well as the membership at large, and will be engaged in a number of technical and codes committees that are important to members' interests. He is a Red Seal refrigeration and air conditioning mechanic with a bachelor's degree in business administration, and he is based and will be working from Rustico, Prince Edward Island. These new additions to the team join our existing group of regional representatives, including Victoria Cross in British Columbia, Carlos Godoy in Quebec, and Jay Pasemko in the Atlantic region. We also continue to rely on Hugh Williams, Kyle Larkin, and the team at Impact Public Affairs to assist in meeting our political engagement needs in Ottawa. And of course, many of you will already know Caroline Chaiko, who leads on key environmental files, such as the refrigerant transition and Scott Papp, who takes on numerous issues of interest to our contractor membership. I feel grateful and privileged to be able to work with such a dedicated team of professionals on the important and challenging issues that we tackle on behalf of members. Thanks to them, and thanks to you for your continued support.